Today, I want to talk about onboarding. So, onboarding is probably the greatest offense I have seen most consumer app founders make. So, I speak to a lot of consumer app founders. I've spoken to probably over 1,000 at events at our house. And the one aspect of every app is different, right? So, every feature is different, every flow in an app is different, but every single consumer app founder I've spoken to has had issues in onboarding. It's a pretty blanket statement that you can apply to everyone. And I've advised a lot of consumer app founders, and we've gone through onboarding step by step to figure out what are the best ways we can tweak it, to improve conversions, to improve the amount of money you make, the amount of retention that your app has. We've been through it. So I kind of compiled a list of sort of the biggest offenses I've noticed in regards to onboarding, and hopefully you can use it to analyze your onboarding, audit it, and try to make it a little cleaner, try to clean it up a little bit and see if your conversions increase. So before we even get into the actual technical side of the onboarding, I want to start talking about your ICP. So your ICP is your initial customer profile. And these are essentially your target audience. Who are you trying to sell this app to? And a big reason onboarding fails and apps fail are because the person that is making the app doesn't understand who they're trying to sell the product to. So they are putting in all these other features and other like branch off points inside of the onboarding that are just confusing the target audience that probably downloaded it for one specific reason, and you're not nailing in on that one specific reason. And honestly, this is why a lot of apps fail just in general. The creator of the app doesn't get why someone wants this app. They don't understand the emotions that it invokes in the user. So one of the first things you have to do before you start even analyzing the onboarding is you have to understand your ICP. Who exactly are you targeting? And then from that, what emotions are you trying to invoke in that audience, right? What are you trying to make them feel? From there, you can actually start asking yourself, okay, how can I make them feel those emotions? So some really, really strong emotions to feel are guilt, right? Guilt and shame are massive. And these are ones that like most apps use, right? Like Cal AI, right? Cal AI goes and says, you probably want to lose weight, but you're not tracking your calories, you feel guilty. And they kind of like put that in your head where it's like you feel guilty for consuming too much, for being fat, right? That guilt is a very powerful motivator for purchasing. So you need to figure out what emotion is going to resonate with your ICP the most, and you need to figure out exactly how you can invoke that emotion inside of your onboarding. After that, you have to analyze where is your traffic coming from? So the people that are coming in to your onboarding, where are they coming from? Is it coming from TikTok? Is it coming from Instagram? Is it coming from paid ads on Facebook, on like the web? Or is it a newsletter, something like that? You have to analyze where exactly the traffic's coming in from, and then you have to tune your app and everything to that. So great example. If you were selling a hardware product, like a physical product that has to be shipped, so e-commerce, or hardware product whatever, consumer hardware product that you made, don't be advertising on TikTok, right? Like maybe a little bit on TikTok, but you can't be expecting software outcomes. Like advertising on TikTok, unless it's a very specific niche ICP, which you have to do if you're doing hardware, just doing like broad UGC is not going to perform very well for hardware, right? Something like TikTok performs best when you have a mobile app because the friction to get to the point of downloading the mobile app is super, super low. Same with Meta ads, same with TikTok ads. You drive traffic directly to an app store link, they download the app. It's super, super simple. So you have to really analyze, okay, where's your traffic coming from? Does it make sense for that traffic to be led to whatever your product is, right? So if you're selling a hardware good or something, you probably want to collect an email or something more simple initially, and then figure out a way to contact them, or at least collect their email initially and then lead them down the e-commerce path. And maybe they make the purchase, maybe they don't, but at least you have a point of contact that you can message and be like, hey, do you still want to buy this product, right? At least you actually captured some information. So now we're actually getting into the onboarding part. So all that was before onboarding. Now we're in the onboarding. So when the user first opens your app, what are the first interactions they have? What is the first impression they get? First impressions matter, right? Like that has been a saying forever. First impressions matter, and there's no different for a product, right? A mobile app, a website that you go to buy your e-commerce product, whatever, right? The first impressions matter. So it can't be buggy, has to be simple, it has to all make sense. So my general rule for onboarding is your first interactions, it should be so like hand-holdy that there's no way for them to fuck it up, right? There should basically be one button that they click. There should be no other interactions that they do. And the first initial screens should be super, super simple. It should remind them why they downloaded the app, what the app is, how it will fix their life, how it will help their life. But you're not asking them to interact with anything. You're not asking them to do anything. It's really just information, next, information, next, information, next. That's it. There's no complication. Everything is dead simple. When you're going down the line of other onboarding screens, the other super important thing is your app cannot be buggy, right? Like there's one thing for your app to have issues and bugs. Like, I mean, that happens. That's nature of software, right? But if your onboarding has those issues, you are gonna have people dropping off super fast. So everything in your onboarding has to be like perfect, has to be crystal clear. And what I actually push a lot of app founders I advise in this regard, I push them to hard code as much things as possible. So if your app uses like APIs for a core feature of it, everything in your onboarding should be first party. So even if the core feature of your app calls a third party API, forget that for onboarding. If you are like demoing how your product works, it has to be hard coded. There should be no opportunity for issues in onboarding, right? Like getting from app downloaded to asking them to pay should be super smooth. No confusion, no bugs, no issues. Rule of thumb that I use when talking about this stuff is basically imagine the absolute dumbest person you could possibly imagine, sleep deprived at 4 a.m. using your app. They should be able to get to the conversion screen. There should be no confusion. There should be no reason why they can't make it there. So everything has to be dead simple. Dead simple, explained explicitly. So within onboarding, we have to introduce this concept of a wow moment. So wow moments are a moment where the user basically says, wow, right? Like they download the app, they immediately see the use case in their daily life and they go, wow, I can't believe I've been living without this. Right? You need to make the user get to that point as fast as you possibly can. That should be one of the first things they experience. So for an example, in our app that we built and scaled and we sold, we introduced the wow moment literally right after the information screen. So we had information 1, 2, 3, simple next buttons. Immediately, we go into like a demo flow of how the app works, basically. But everything is hard-coded. We're not asking for permissions. We're not doing anything. Everything is hard-coded, and it's kind of like a simulation of what the app is going to do. And it brings the user through how they would use the app day to day, but all within onboarding, without asking for permissions, without getting complicated, without asking for a paywall, just showing the user how it works so they can experience it and say, wow. So you want to make sure you're minimizing the amount of time it takes to get to the point of the user saying, wow. You got to put that wow moment right in the beginning of onboarding. It should be super close to like they onboard, like they download the app and they have the wow moment. That should really be it. Has to be right there. And it has to be very clear, right? So your wow moment has to be very explicit, has to show exactly what the user downloaded the app to do, right? Like the intention that they had needs to be shown in this wow moment. Just dead simple. So another great tactic that I see in onboarding being used, we used it in our app, was quizzes. So the concept of quizzes is, you remember that emotion I told you to think about with your ICP? The concept of quizzes is that you should be leading the user through a path of self-identifying with that emotion. So, for example, our app was a prayer app. It was religious in nature. It was like a screen time, Opal, like same sort of thing, but mixed with religion. So before they open up Instagram, they get hit with a prayer and they have to say the prayer and reflect. So our whole motivation was, these are Christians that want to pray more, but they're not praying as much as they would like to. So there's that guilt factor, right? So we hit them with in the quiz, we were like, how many times do you wish you were praying per day? how many times you actually pray per day. Why do you think you're not praying as much as you are? And these are all like predefined multiple choice options that they can pick. They select one, they hit next. That's it. Dead simple, but it just makes them self-identify with the issue so that they're more likely to convert because they have that emotion of guilt, right? They have that emotion that you're trying to invoke in them. It's working. So the quizzes are fantastic. The quizzes also give you an opportunity to like personalize the app to a certain degree. You don't even have to, but if you give the impression that you are personalizing the app for the user, that goes really far, right? Like that feels special and the user will react in a special way to that. So one of the tricks we used was we saved all the information in case we wanted to use it for some reason. But for the most part, the quiz was just there for the user to self-identify and to make them feel like a personalization was being done for them. So we had a little loading indicator and we made them wait. And we were just like, oh, we're creating your custom prayer plan, right? That, something as dead simple as that is incredibly effective because it invokes not only the emotion of guilt, but now the emotion of like, oh my God, I'm getting something special for my money, right? They're doing this just for me based off of my situation that I have just filled in. That is incredibly powerful. So the other offense that I see in apps that are not converting in onboarding is paywalls. Most app founders are very skittish with showing paywalls, and I get it. It could be scary to ask for money, but you have to remember at the end of the day, you're in this for making money, more likely than not. And the only way that your app is going to continue, your business is going to continue, you're going to be able to continue doing this is if you are making money. You can't be scared of asking for money, of like putting up the paywalls and doing it. You have to show the paywalls. A little anecdote that we learned from PrayScreen was you could show an astronomical amount of paywalls and it will probably do better than you expect. So within onboarding, we showed 3 different paywalls throughout onboarding at 3 different points, and that performed really, really well because if they skipped one paywall, which we allowed at times, they skipped one, they would go through onboarding, feel a little more emotion, get hit with another paywall. And they would usually convert at that point. We also offered like abandoned cart paywalls with like a discount. So there's like lots of tricks you can do, but you cannot be afraid of showing more paywalls. I also alluded to us allowing skipping of paywalls and not allowing skipping of paywalls. So this is something that we played around with a lot. We jumped around, we tried a bunch of different things. Ultimately, we found that depending on your ICP or whatever, for us, having a hard paywall where you cannot even use the app unless you pay for it, that works really well for brief periods of time. It could maybe work longer, right? We were kind of like growing our app and changing it over time, right? So it wasn't necessarily the same product over all these like testing periods, but making paywalls unskippable is a pretty effective way of just pushing more conversions to paid. Super simple. Inside of those paywalls, you also have the opportunity to design it however you want, right? So understanding the fundamentals of good paywall design is also super important. So we had a lot of videos, we showcased features, we talked about the reviews, all within the paywall. And we had 3 different paywalls. So they all showcased different features. We had the reviews like highlighting different parts. We had one that was a video, one was a photo. So like you also are changing the elements of these paywalls to try to just appeal slightly differently every single time, right? Then you have the concept of price laddering, which we utilized a lot, and we tested with a bunch of different prices, which is something that I'll get into in a little bit, but you have the opportunity to show multiple prices and multiple subscription options, right? If it's a subscription product. Take that, like use that to your advantage, right? Learn about price laddering, understand how you can make a more expensive option that you actually want them to purchase feel like a great value versus another one that if they purchase, you're also very happy about, right? So like PrayStream, we had a weekly option, $8 a week. That's really expensive. Right beside it, we had yearly for $50. All of a sudden, yearly for $50 sounds pretty damn good. Then there's the option for free trials. So this was another one of those things that we tested on and off. And ultimately, we found free trials works really well. But we had like a 3-day free trial, which is the minimum you're allowed to do on iOS. And just having that option for a free trial made conversions like skyrocket because they had the option to try the app, experienced it for a couple of days, and then they got hit by a paywall and they had to pay. And honestly, they converted a lot. And in most cases, it was like a recurring payment, right? So like you agree to pay the subscription, you get the trial, you experience the app, whether you know it or not, unless you specifically cancel it, after those 3 days, we charge your card, right? And that's all through Apple, like iOS. That works really, really well. So I talk a lot about testing, right? Like we ran a lot of experiments with price laddering, with paywalls, with making them skippable, unskippable, placements of them. There is a whole other side of onboarding where every app is different, right? So I can sit there and I can say your onboarding probably is not performing, but I wouldn't be able to sit there and tell you exactly what you should do in your onboarding. That is very based on your ICP, who you're just specifically targeting at that time even, right? Like some subsect of your ICP. If they are responding to something specifically, you want to like really just narrow in on them for that time, right? And then maybe it changes over time, whatever. The only way you know this is through A/B testing. So we littered our onboarding with analytics. We knew everything that happened in our onboarding. We knew where people stopped, where people stayed at screens for too long, where they dropped off. We saw everything. If they tapped the wrong button, you need to be able to do that so that you can analyze your onboarding and see where you have fall off points. That's super important, right? Like where are people leaking out of your funnel? Where are you losing people? Because obviously that affects your conversion rate, right? You have so many people installing, but if 80% of them don't even make it to the paywall to convert, then I mean, like that's horrible, right? Horrible, horrible numbers. You're going to be in like single digit conversion rates. Not ideal. So this gives you an opportunity to analyze all that. But the thing that it also lets you do is A/B test. So we set up a lot of remote configuration options where we implemented code within onboarding, but it was triggerable by a server. So we would have an API request that would go and be like, hey, should I show this paywall? Should I show this screen? Should I whatever? And we would turn it on and off and test. We would watch analytics and we would see, okay, we have the paywall unskippable. How many people are converting now? Okay, let's make it skippable now and add this paywall. How many people are converting now? We could watch that in real time. That is super, super powerful. And that whole concept of A/B testing is how you really tailor an onboarding to the target audience that you are building for, right? Because there's no one size fits all for onboarding. There's no one size fits all for an app or whatever. So learn, right? Like have the opportunity to learn from what you're trialing, what you're testing, and see how your users are actually responding. And one of the other massive things that I see happen in onboarding is that during onboarding is when you start asking for like notification permissions, geolocation, whatever other permissions, microphone, camera, whatever. You start asking for those permissions in onboarding. You should not do that until the user has converted. So remember how I said about like hard coding and everything? You should hard code everything. Hard code your experience so that there is no need for permissions up until the paywall. Once they hit the paywall, they've actually converted. Now you can ask for the permissions because it's like sunken cost fallacy, right? Like they have already paid for something. Now they want to get the most out of it. Now you can hit them with all this complicated stuff, asking them for permissions. And if you need like auth, for an example, like if device auth is not enough, you need them to sign up for an account for whatever reason, do it then. Don't do it before the conversion. Always try to capture the conversion first before you start making things complicated because you're just going to lose people with every bit of friction you add. So throw it behind the paywall and just let them hit the paywall, convert, then they can do all that messy business. So that's pretty much all of the biggest issues I've seen with onboarding when I advise people, when I talk to consumer app founders. So I think you should really take all these notes and look at your onboarding and see if you are implementing all of them, if you're trialing enough, if you're testing, and if you are really tailoring your onboarding experience to your ICP. Because at the end of the day, conversion is all that matters, right? That is your main KPI. You want to make money. The app needs to make money. You need to make money to continue doing this. So you have to track that and you have to understand the mechanisms that go into that. And this is exactly what it is, right? This is your onboarding. This is what is going to cause people to convert or fall off. Anyway, hopefully that was useful. If you need any assistance or whatever, like you want some opinions on your onboarding, hit me up, let me know. Peace.